Hello, welcome to G.SaygbeReads. I'm so happy you could join me again. Before I get into this video, I need you to like, comment, and subscribe. The traditional East African tribe of the Maasai people often greet one another with a common phrase. The phrase is, "How are the children?" And depending on the nature of the community, one would respond, "The children are well." As I go through this video, I want you to think and consider, how are the children here in the United States in regards to their education? Now, in 2023, we saw a sweeping number of policies across the nation banning and censoring books and book titles. And so I want to talk about how banned books in 2023 is going to impact us as families, as learners, and as students now in 2024. Now, before I get into an article that I read and I want to introduce to all of you, I have some facts that I want to share. In America, 21% of adults are illiterate. In America, 40% of US children are illiterate. We know that in some states, the state uses the test scores, the reading test scores of third or fourth grade children to determine how many prison beds they will need to create in the future. Now, this is called the cradle to prison pipeline. That's a different story for another day. But we see that in America, reading and literacy as a whole has been a bit thrown by the wayside. And what does it mean that if we are to be a dominating country, if we are to be this superpower, what does it mean when our students do not have the basic reading level? In an article written by the Teachers College at Columbia University, entitled "What You Need to Know About the Book Ban Sweeping the U.S., the article goes into detail about how books being banned has not been something new. In fact, it is something that we've seen throughout history, but why was it so prominent in 2023, and what will be its impacts for the years to come? Now, in this article, 4 professors from Columbia University, seen as experts in economics, law, education, and history, give us insight on how banning books and censorship will impact us for years to come, how it impacts the economy, how it will impact history. And so I want to share with you a few takeaways that I took while reading this article. Now, the article goes to say that according to the American Library Association, over 3,000 books were banned and censored throughout the years of 2022 and 2023. Now, this is 38% more of books that were banned than in the year 2020. These books that were being pulled off shelves are typically books that are about those who are in the LGBTQ community, books about race, gender, sexuality. Now, the banning of books in America is not new. The Supreme Court last had a ruling in 1982, and with that ruling, it gave school boards and states a kind of broad discretion on what the state or school board seems appropriate to have in classroom curriculum or to have in a library shelf. Now, because the school board, who are typically shaped by parents, family, community, because they have a broad discretion, a broad judgment on what they see as appropriate for students to read, We see now that a lot of material has been taken off of curriculum lists and taken off of library shelves. The article goes to say that this is a battle to censor materials over social justice issues, and this posed a number of implications for education. Now, what's important for all of us to know is how does this impact students? If our students are already reading at a lower grade level, if our students are not able to write and complete sentences, how will this impact students for years to come? Well, first and foremost, the article highlights that white male youth were already more likely to see themselves depicted in children's books. Now, despite how much data is out there that says culturally inclusive reading material uplifts all children, this study is basically being ignored, and we see that students now are not going to have books that reflect them or their culture or the times. Now we know not having equitable reading material limits students from envisioning a future that they will be able to inhabit. However, the article goes on to say that what also will be an impact is limiting information access, censorship. As a Black woman who teaches Black students, I know that most of the books that are being stripped from libraries and curriculum are written by Black authors. And these are books that talk about police brutality and slavery. And if we are taking slavery out of history books, then we are not teaching our students the truth about American history. And what the article highlights is that we should look at Germany as a country who uses their racial unjust and their history to teach the truth. They talk about the Holocaust in their history classes. And it's something that we should do too. The article goes on to tell us why banning books is legal. It is a legal thing. And so it takes us back to 1982. The Supreme Court issued a non-committal ruling that continues to keep schools and libraries in the political crosshairs. And this has been going on for a bit more than 40 years. In 1982, in Long Island, Tree Union Free School District versus Pico, the court deemed that local school boards have broad discretion in the management of school affairs, and that discretion must be exercised in a manner that comports with the transcendent imperatives of the First Amendment. The article says that in practice, the application of the First Amendment hinges on the existence of evidence that books are banned for political reasons and violate freedom of expression. However, without more explicit guidance, school boards often make decisions that prioritize community values rather than access to information. Now, censorship and banning of books and written material is not new. We see it in ancient China as far back as 259 BC, as well as in the Roman Empire in 35 AD when the Odyssey came out. Now, Ainsley Erickson, Associate Professor of History and Education Policy, writes, we have to think about the current bans as a part of a larger pattern of fights over time. She goes on to say, the United States history since its inception is full of uses of curriculum to shape politics, the economy, and culture. This is really a dramatic moment, but the curriculum has always been political, and people in power have always used their power to control marginalized people, and in turn, historically, marginalized groups have always challenged that power. One example is when Latinx students were forbidden from speaking Spanish in their Southwest schools throughout the 20th century. These bans really matter, but one of the ways we can imagine a response is by looking back at how people created spaces for what wasn't given room for in classrooms. Now, what we see happening as a resolution is continuous discord in school board meetings, as well as protests that are happening in New York and in Texas. Now, again, I began this video with asking, how are the children? And as we can see, looking at literacy in the United States, the children are not well. And right now, students, families, and educators have the opportunity to band together to come and make change around civic education and reading at large. Thank you all.